Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast. It is somehow, not quite sure how, Friday the 27th of June. July is upon us. Oh my
What the
God.
hell?
What the hell is going on? Somebody make it make sense. As usual, myself and the wonderful Angie, mainly Angie, I'm just here to listen like everyone else. Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in the agricultural markets. But before she does, and so that I don't get a spanking, I will get the legals out of the way. So as usual, nothing discussed on this space is assessor and constitute trader or investment advisor and infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the glamorous with a capital G, Angie Setzer. Angie, how are you,
Woohoo!
my love? Happy Friday.
It's Friday. There's green on the green screen. I'm going to shut it off and go home and don't tell me if it changes.
Pub.
Cause this week's been a rough one. I feel like Chris Farley and Black Sheep after he went down the
Yes.
mountain. You know what I mean? Like I just stood up and what the hell just happened? That's me at the end of the week. Right now. So, happy Friday. A few things going on. Not really much though. Like I kind of feel like we're in wait and see mode, obviously, with the USDA report out on Monday. But we didn't get some,
Also, sorry, I've got a
yeah.
theory on this. I
Okay,
I
yes.
think I think that there is still plenty going on, but because our bar for kind of what's going on is so high, we're now thinking, you know what, not much has happened, but really
Right?
a ton has happened. But just in relation to what's been going on over the last month or so, we're
We
like,
didn't
oh,
have a
this is
war
a really
start
quiet.
overnight. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I mean, things are copacetic over here. I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're just in wait and see mode with all of these millions of little things happening everywhere that you should be paying attention to, but let's just not and call it a good day for Friday.
Yep.
But anyway, trade wise, we got another China headline. Guess what? It's the same China headline. If you liked the China headline that we've been getting for the last 2 months now,
You'll love this one.
you'll love this one. Yeah. Cause it's basically the same thing. Just now, I guess you could say it's official. They made it Facebook official, right? Like, I'm going to cough one
Yeah.
second. All right.
Well,
There. If I
just
didn't do
just
that.
on this,
Yeah.
so basically, what kind of rumors were correct in terms of this deal that they've signed? It's one of two things. It's either the China are agreeing that it's the fact that basically they're signing up to a framework to talk about the deal, which is kind of
Yes.
what we had in Zurich a few Sundays ago. But
Yes.
also, what's happened, and this is where I think some people were within the within Trump's inner circle, this is what they're latching onto as the deal that they've signed, is the fact that they're looking for ways for China to ease the restrictions on rare earths and magnets and stuff, which they put into these restrictions went into place way before the tariff announcements. So even if we are talking about a deal, it's nothing to do with the tariff deal
Yeah.
and the tariff stuff. It's about the rare earths and stuff, which China were heavily limiting the export of before Trump, before Liberation Day. But also they have just re-agreed the fact that there is a framework in place. But
Yeah.
we're still miles away from any deals. But yeah, whatever makes them
It's
happy.
Let's just be honest. This is going to be as good a deal as what you're
Yes.
we're not in a trade embargo. Like we're not, like you're going to see China if they need certain products, they're going to waive the
Yeah.
10%. Like everyone keeps saying, well, they're not going to buy soybeans. Yeah, your private crushers may not buy soybeans, but China honestly would prefer to import U.S. beans, put them into government reserves and then auction them suckers off later. It provides them a bit more in the way of control over the movement of grain and certain things
Yeah.
like that. And so there's a lot of folks up in arms currently about the lack of China bean purchases, trying to say it's a trade war, related sort of thing. You saw that meal transaction yesterday with Argentina and everyone's losing their mind. Argentina's meal, I mean, it's practically free at this point. Like you're going to load that stuff up, see how it works, take it over. It does kind of change or bring into question, how you could see the soybean market, the soybean complex overall, fundamentally change here as we move ahead and we see an increase in biofuel demand around the world and some of these other things. But, I think a lot of people on the grain side are going to be talking about, well, there's this lack of China purchases for new crop. Honey, they ain't even buying last half August, September at this point. Like they are at 0% covered. They've got plenty of room to buy. But at this point too, you also have Brazil kind of coming in and offering up their soybeans a bit longer into the old crop year. You've got farmers that are willing to sell soybeans in Brazil more than they're wanting to sell corn at this point, which is unusual and will likely change if harvest pace ever picks up. But yeah, I mean, the deal is the deal with China right now, basically that they're going to provide rare earth materials to the people that need them because they had shut that off via export licensing and restrictions and things like that. It created a huge problem in the manufacturing sector.
Yeah.
And then the U.S. managed to have ethane, whatever, that is about the equivalent, that China needs, just as bad. And so we both shut it up. We're both like, no, well, screw you. So this agreement just basically opens up the flow of things that people need and potentially some additional AI, chip technology and some of these other things. Sorry, Ryan. I go ahead. I was like talked right over top of you.
No, I haven't said anything. No, you carry on.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
listening. No,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, that's
I'm
just
sat here,
basically.
I'm sat here taking notes.
But that's where we're at. It's like you've seen trade restrictions, and I'd said this a couple weeks ago, and I think this is I think the reality is setting in. Chip technology, the rare earth materials, the difference in, these important critical things that the U.S. has that China needs and China has that the U.S. needs. I think it really just changed a lot of what the agreement would look like. And then when it comes to like cutting into deficits and things like that, there was reportedly a Chinese official that was like, you want us to, cut our deficit through beef and soybeans? Like, let us buy the shit we want to buy. And so
Yeah.
we'll see if that happens too. But yeah, if you like the first China headline, guess what? You love it, the third time around, cause that's where
I was
we're
going
at.
to say, and you're going to love it on the 8th time around in about
Right.
3 weeks'
It's going to
time.
keep on coming. Yeah. Cause when we get to August, then they'll agree officially that they're going to continue to postpone, whatever. And so like I said, I mean, I'm not here to say it's negative. It's just probably going to look very different this go around, the trade truce, than what it did, last time, which
Yeah.
I had thought, they'd go back and try to get phase 1 in place. And, at this point, I think they had other things yeah.
That sucker's 90% done from like
Right.
12 years ago.
It'll be forever.
I tell you one interesting kind of development, and this is me reading between the lines and just seeing the gazillion headlines across the feed and just trying to pick up air quotes, the vibe.
Right.
It seems like the deadline is becoming less and less of a deadline
Oh yeah.
from Trump's perspective or from the administration's perspective, because we're seeing increasing number of comments such as like, oh, the deadline, we're not worried about that, or it's not so important. So I think the whole the discussion now and we even mentioned it yesterday, in terms of like what's going to happen with the can kicking. I think that could be the story. I think for the next week or so, I think that's going to be more of a story now. Like, how are we going to deal with that deadline? Because are they going to wait until the last minute before they extend it, or are we going to get a lot of communication, a lot of kind of forward guidance that it will be pushed down the line or just even removed? Because that seems to be the way that just like the offhand comments seem to be going.
Yes. And they're saying at this point, like you saw this morning, Lutnick, which giant grain of salt, it had come out and said, yeah, we've got 10 agreements. We're going to put these countries into buckets. Everyone's going to get a letter. Again, the letter. Have you ever heard anything about the first letter? Everyone loves the letter. We just got a letter. I hope you put that in your head and keep it there forever. But when it comes down to it though, like everyone's going to get a letter. We're going to put these folks into buckets, yada, yada, yada. India's real close. Japan's real close. Vietnam's real close. South Korea's real close. Recycled headlines again. And yeah, you saw yesterday Trump was kind of like, deadline who? I have never heard of her. I don't know what you're talking about. And honestly, you've seen Japan and the EU both be like, we are not negotiating with the deadline in mind. Go ahead. If you want to screw up negotiations, all of the progress that we've had over the last 90 days by putting these tariffs back on, you can do it. We're ready to, we're ready for you. Though you did see the EU kind of look like they were taking a bit of a softer stance, I felt like yesterday. So I'm guessing Italy and Germany and a couple others may have had their sort of say where it's like, dude, let's just deal with the next 3 years, and we did see, and this will be the last sort of trade thing. I actually just retweeted it, which I thought was interesting. Someone had posted, like some macro strategist. I feel bad. I probably should know him, but I'm terrible about it, about how they had kind of talked to some of these industry professionals and some of these other things. And like the uncertainty that comes with tariffs exists in every aspect of the business and life at this point. Like you have businesses that are like, yeah, we haven't raised our prices yet. Like we're not really focusing on replacement costs because this could change dramatically.
So this is the piece that Dario put out.
Yes.
Dario,
Yes.
I can
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
confirm that Dario is a very, very, very good guy. He's one of
Okay,
us.
good,
Yeah,
good. He's good. I'm always like, ooh, I don't know for sure. But he did, and so I thought that was interesting in and of itself, where you are kind of, one of the biggest things that we tend to talk about is replacement cost in grains. And obviously replacement costs come into play in a whole host of levels. And so that was one thing that was of interest to me anyway.
yeah,
Now, kind of a nice segue, right? Replacement costs in and of themselves. It is interesting to note that, we have this sort of conversation in grains about these big crops coming out of Brazil. And we have a lot of bushels that will move their way out of Argentina too, especially with the announcement that the retention tax isn't going to, like they've done that tax holiday like we talked about.
yeah,
That comes to an end on Monday, which should really slow farmer selling from here. You saw a really aggressive pace early on. And like you talked about, it's kind of like daylight savings time where we took the hour from the end of the day and
yeah,
moved it to the front
yeah,
of the day.
yeah, yeah.
That's basically,
It's like at the end of it, you still got 24 hours, but it's just where you want to put them.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have this amount that you're going to export. It's just a matter of if it comes into the pipe, which it matters in the short-term movement and some of
Of
these other
course, yeah,
things,
yeah,
but it's not something that is a long-term game changer. And so that's the question that we have now with Brazil. We had a conversation yesterday with our friend Nico, and Eduardo from AgriInvest. And one of the points that I think is most interesting right now is you're just seeing this continuation of super slow grain movement in Brazil. Like a lot of the corn that's sitting in the field right now, typically you would start to see it drying down naturally. It's one of those things where the farmers would wait, they'd get it out of the field, 18% moisture or below, probably closer to 15, 16. I'm not 100% sure. Here we shoot for 15, but down there it could be a little bit different. But in any event, it's wet. It's staying wet. And you need warm, dry weather really to help speed up the natural process of corn drying. And so one of the things that I think you're going to see is sort of this continuation of super slow harvest progress, across Brazil. And what is, where that becomes a problem is that you had a bunch of end users, merchandisers, exporters, whatever, that have been really kind of waiting for this huge flow of corn to come in. Like we're still talking about these big production estimates and all of these other things.
right, yeah,
But like I've said a million times, right? Balance sheets are great, but they aren't really indicative of actual grain flow. And so right now you have a large Brazilian export book that's going to have to be put somewhere. Same sort of scenarios what we were talking about before. But the problem is right now everyone was anticipating a large flow of grain to start July and into August. And that was going to help kind of bridge this gap and maybe even kind of nip the U.S. export program in the bud, create some issues for new crop, yada, yada, yada. We're not seeing that. And really right now, there's not a ton outside of the Argentina corn. There's not a ton of available supply in the world market. We're watching European weather. Like there's a lot of things that are happening in this market that once we get beyond Monday, could really kind of push us in a super different direction. And so that'll be what we're watching. Grain flows, trade deals, any sort of conversation that we see over the weekend. And then of course weather. Like I said, EU's dry. China's got flooding in the south, dry in the north. The US looks pretty good most everywhere though. North America really.
yeah.
And so yeah,
I tell
that's
you
where
what.
we're at, I think.
Speaking of
Yeah.
Nico, and we both love Nico, and his
Yes.
product. I've put I don't know what it's called. I keep calling it the jumbotron, but you know where you can post tweets into the
Mhm.
spaces of it. I've also reposted. He's done a really good thread using his company's AI that specializes on weather without the bias, basically. He's done a really good
Yes.
thread on production risk highlights for each country. It's definitely worth checking out. Like I said, it's up in the top in the jumbotron, but also I've just
It's
given it a
really
repost
good.
as well. Definitely,
Yeah.
if grain markets are your bag, which I'm guessing they are because you're listening to us,
Right.
definitely give it a read. But yeah, absolutely.
I did give him a hard time though about all of the flags. I'm like, why would you have to pick on me in my backwards education? Like, what are these flags? It's not fair. I need
Is it?
words.
Yeah, it's a Friday geography
I
quiz. What
guess
more do you
so.
want?
Golly geez, I'm not that smart. So, but yeah, so a lot to pay attention to. I still kind of stand by my, sort of thesis that, we've really kind of pushed up, the shit show for lack of a better term in this market. I'm not quite sure if obviously Monday's numbers will have a huge influence on whether
Yeah,
this is over or not, the relentless pounding of things. But, I do think that this July, August, September timeframe in these grain markets looks very, very different than last year. And when it comes to old crop supply availability, I'm hearing more and more from merchandisers around the country that are kind of like, oh, it's a little tight for July and into August. And so we'll see what happens. We'll be paying attention to that. And, at this point, Yeehaw, happy Friday. Good luck and have a
Absolutely.
great weekend.
And absolutely, and also, yeah, we've been saying for like the full week now that we're in a holding pattern until Monday's
Yes.
report. So
Oh, I
hopefully,
hate
from
this.
next week we can kick on again.
Yeah,
But
we'll be able to. Well, Monday morning will be the worst because we won't be doing anything. And then
oh yes,
Tuesday I'll
true.
either be hungover or happy. One or the other. We'll see what happens.
Perfect. Well, Angie, thank you so much for everything you do. I, more than anyone else in the world, appreciate and love you immensely. I'm sure our listeners do too. Speaking of listeners, we really do appreciate you as well. Whatever you are doing today, over the weekend, keep it tight, stay safe. And yeah, we'll see you all on Monday. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.